In 1952, American composer John Cage premiered a piece that would become one of the most radical gestures in 20th century music. Titled 4 minutes and 33 seconds, it consisted of a pianist sitting at the instrument without playing a single note for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. The audience, at first confused, soon began to hear what the piece was really about. The rustle of breath, the hum of the room, the world bleeding in through the cracks. Cage had revealed that silence is never truly silent. It is a space charged with presence, with listening, and with potential. Something similar happens in the work of Maynard James Keenan. Although he is most often described through his voice, an instrument of remarkable range and intensity, it is perhaps his silence that speaks the loudest. The ellipses in his lyrics, the shadows that shroud his stage presence, the deliberate refusals to explain. Keenan is a frontman who does not lead, and he has been adamant about this posture throughout his career. In interviews, he has repeatedly insisted that the music, and not the man, should be the focus. He rarely stands at the front of the stage. He often performs in the shadows, in costume or partially obscured. "I'm just the conduit," he once remarked. "I'm not the message." As a lyricist, he avoids declaratives and conclusions. His work opens space rather than closing it. To understand Keenan, we must turn to a tradition older than rock music, a tradition that insists the deepest truths cannot be said, only gestured at. This essay is not a biography of Maynard. It is not about Tool or A Perfect Circle or Pucifer, at least not directly. It is about an aesthetic of refusal, of what it means to approach meaning not by speaking, but by silencing the self. It is, in short, about the apophatic artist. The term apophasis comes from the Greek, meaning denial or negation. In theological traditions, especially in Christian mysticism and Neoplatonism, it refers to the via negativa, the belief that the divine cannot be defined by what it is, only by what it is not. God is not finite, not temporal, not conceivable. Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagite, a Christian theologian who lived in the 5th or 6th century, insisted that any positive statement about God was ultimately false. Johannes Eckhart, centuries later, would echo, "The more God is in all things, the more he is outside them. The more he is within, the more he is without." This theological mode gave rise to an aesthetic tradition, one that privileges minimalism, indirection, and paradox. In Zen koans, in the negative space of Chinese calligraphy, in the gaps and silences of Beckett's prose, in the hushed reverence of Rothko's late canvases. In music, it resonates in the unresolved structures of Morton Fieldman, the austerity of Arvo Pärt, the drones of Sonau. Apophatic art does not explain, it withholds, it gestures instead of declaring. Meaning is approached asymptotically, never reached, only circled. Keenan's work belongs firmly within this lineage. As a lyricist, he crafts songs that point to something beyond themselves, through contradiction, ambiguity, and deliberate opacity. The listener is never told what to feel or think. The song unfolds, and the meaning is left in suspension. Maynard James Keenan has long resisted the machinery of celebrity. He performs in the shadows, rendering his presence partial, theatrical, and unstable. In Tool concerts, he often remains in the back, barely visible. With Pucifer, he adopts absurdist personae, parroting the very idea of the lead singer. This is not mere eccentricity. It is a form of artistic refusal, a refusal to centralize the ego, a refusal to flatten the complexity of experience into spectacle. Keenan performs as a cipher. His art destabilizes rather than clarifying. The tension between disintegration and harmony is never resolved, only gestured toward. Tool's music is filled with such moments. Songs stretch beyond conventional structure, resisting the gratification of chorus or climax or guitar solos to create meaning by refusal. It is to insist that certain truths, emotional, spiritual, existential, cannot be delivered neatly, but rather worked through. There is a paradox at the heart of Tool's sound. It is maximalist and minimalist at the same time. Complex rhythms, layered textures, polyrhythms, odd time signatures, yet always with a sense of restraint. Every sonic explosion is preceded by prolonged tension. This architecture of build-up and suspended resolution mirrors a ritual-like structure. The slow progression, the gestures, the symbolic actions. In works like Reflection, Disposition, Wings for Marie, we encounter the suggestion of what lies behind it, an awareness that what is being expressed is less important than the space being opened. Sound becomes negative space. That which cannot be said becomes audible, not through lyrics, but through contrast. Keenan is also a winemaker. At first glance, this may seem unrelated, but wine is a form of time-made material. It is a product of decay, pressure, patience, and transformation. Fermentation is a kind of alchemy. Something dies so something else can live. The grape decomposes, the yeast consumes. What emerges is not merely a drink, but a distillation of elemental change. The same process occurs in 10,000 Days, a work shaped by the death of Maynard's mother. The lyrics are simultaneously intimate and opaque, deeply emotional, yet never sentimental. They enact grief not by declaration, but by invocation. The listener is invited to inhabit the space of mourning, not to witness a story, but to move through a rite. As in apophatic theology, death is not named directly. It is only gestured toward. The space left in its wake becomes the locus of meaning. For those of you drawn to the paradoxes behind his persona, Keenan's authorized biography offers a rare window. The book doesn't decode the mystery, but rather deepens it. More than a memoir, it reads kind of like a collage. Contradictions, discipline and chaos, intellect and instinct, the sacred and the profane. It chronicles the quieter forces that shaped him, a military childhood, a profound respect for process, an affinity for solitude, and of course, his little bird Harpo. It is less about fame and more about fermentation, about how art, like wine, requires both precision and surrender. Maynard James Keenan's career unfolds through a sustained practice of strategic absence. His use of voice, persona, and lyrical structure resists the confessional mode so often expected of frontmen. Instead of presenting a coherent self or a unifying message, Keenan constructs a negative space, an aesthetic architecture that invites interpretation precisely by withholding it. This strategy is neither incidental nor passive. It reflects a broader apophatic logic, that meaning, particularly when approaching the sacred, is not best delivered, but evoked. It is a logic shared by traditions of negative theology, by minimalism in modern art, and by ritual forms that prioritize gesture over explanation. To frame Keenan as an apophatic artist is not to elevate him to a mystic status, but to locate his work within a lineage of creative practice that values negation as a mode of articulation. In an era of oversaturation, of relentless clarity, immediacy, and self-disclosure, his commitment to refusal, opacity, and duration stands as a rare and deliberate alternative. Not everything must be said to be heard, and not everything that is heard must be explained.
Clearly, Maynard is no longer the angry young man he was back in Tool's early days. And for those who missed that old surly Maynard, there's this advice.